Olá, leitores do blog Lei Islâmica em Ação. Aqui é José Atento, em um lugar perdido na fronteira Canadá e Estados Unidos, e com a oportunidade de entrevistar Ned May. Ned é administrador do grupo, do blog Gates of Vienna, que é um dos mais antigos blogs do movimento anti-jihad, e é um dos mais conhecidos e funciona desde 2004. Ned irá fazer um balanço da infiltração islâmica na Europa e, obviamente, servindo como alerta para o Brasil. So, Ned, how do you see the current, the process and the current stage of the Islamic infiltration in Europe?
Well, it's different in the East or the Central Europe than it is in the West. Western Europe is, to various degrees, thoroughly Islamized already. I don't know which is the worst, either Britain, France, or Sweden. All three of them are heading into the danger zone. I think France has the largest percentage population of Muslims. It's hard to tell because they don't allow the collection of the data anymore. And so it all has to be guesswork what the Muslim population in France is, but it's quite large, probably over 15% now. Sweden is just collapsing so rapidly because of that. Reinfeldt, through the prime minister then, threw open the doors before Chancellor Merkel did in Germany. Sweden started. He told them anybody in Syria may come here, and so they did. They started for Sweden, and they've been coming ever since. And well, they've slowed it down, but they have got so many of them on welfare. They don't. Not many of them work, and they rape the women, and they rob and they blow things up and shoot each other. And Sweden is collapsing faster than any other place and faster than most people realize, I think. Britain is a strange case because the Brexit is not going to affect their Islamization. It will affect traffic to and from the European Union, but their Pakistanis and Bangladeshis and whatnot are coming in from far away and not coming in through the EU. So unless the new free Britain gets a grip on that, they're just going to continue the way they're continuing. And they already have their Sharia courts, and we've seen what happens to Tommy Robinson and other less prominent people who get arrested and imprisoned for criticizing Islam, or even just criticizing. You can get arrested for criticizing gay rights, I think, in Britain, arrested and imprisoned.
Was it in Britain that the guy who pasted ham?
Yeah,
was arrested?
Put bacon on I think it was bacon on a mosque, the handle of the door of a mosque, and he got sent to prison for, I think it was a year, and got killed 6 months into it or something.
He was killed in prison by
He got killed. Well, they never released the cause of his death that I ever. Did you ever hear? No.
After a lot of pressure, they gave a fairly generic thing saying that he had, it might have been suicide, but they gave a very, let's say they gave a Jeffrey Epstein autopsy.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And let's see, what's the Western European country that is Denmark may be doing the best, but if Matteo Salvini ever becomes prime minister of Italy, Italy could move into the front of countries resisting the whole process, especially if he joins with Giorgia Meloni. And I would love to see a government with both of those people in it. That would be, we'd have such great videos to do, But Central Europe is Hungary is the best off because they are not dependent on the European Central Bank, And that's the main difference. Poland and Slovakia, the Czech Republic, still depend on the ECB for they're in debt. And so the EU has leverage over them. The EU has no leverage over the Hungarian government until it gets its army. And that's the only way they could exercise any leverage over Hungary. So Hungary is the place to watch as the model of how things can be done. It's the most important things are happening in Hungary.
So the European tanks may run in Budapest, as the Soviet ones ran.
And that's what Orban is expecting and preparing for, I think. That's why he is promoting the European army, because he wants the Hungarians to have a share of control over it. My guess is that he's calculating if the Hungarians are actively involved in the command of the army, it will be harder for it to turn against Hungary. That's my theory. But even Switzerland, which is not in the EU, is importing the Muslims by the thousands, and also trying and convicting people for saying anti-Islamic things. And they're lining up their policies with the EU. And Norway is also not in the EU, and Norway used to be almost as bad as Sweden. But what it looks like now is the Norwegians have paid attention to what is happening in Sweden. And even though they vilified Fjordman and drove him out of the country, they moved in the directions that Fjordman talked about. They've got a government that has cut the immigration, that actually deports people. They deported 300 people at once from Norway, it's last year, I think. But, so Norway is actually more resistant than Switzerland at this point.
What about Germany?
Germany is moving fast, obviously. Germany is such an economic powerhouse and so strong that it's going to take a few more years before it's totally collapsed the way Sweden is going. Germany has a lot more, starting from a much higher position. It has longer to fall, but it's falling rapidly. And it appears quite intentional that it's being done. It's chilling to listen to the statements of the highest leaders in the governing coalition, you know.
So what would a Islamized Western Europe do? I mean, let's suppose Great Britain, for example, it has an Islamic government. So what do they do? They use that as a leverage to spread Islam, like in a Commonwealth. I mean,
I don't know.
France, for example, France becomes a emirate,
and both of them are nuclear powers too.
That's right.
So I don't know. Since it's never happened before that a major Western country became Islamic, it's hard to tell. The mayor of London is a Muslim, and the what's his name, Sabi Jazi?
Oh, the Khan?
No, the other one, the Home Secretary. Sabi Javi.
Yeah, I'll
you can get his name and put it under this in subtitles, because I can't remember it exactly. And he's very interesting because he seems like a secular Muslim. He gives all that the indications of being a secular Muslim, but of course, one remains suspicious, right? Normally, Muslims who are mostly secular, when Islam really comes in, they become as Islamic as the others. And so it's hard to tell with him. But there was a while that they thought he would be the next prime minister and not Boris Johnson. And so when Britain gets its first Muslim prime minister, what happens then? I don't know.
So for a country to avoid becoming an Islamic country, what steps should be taken? What do you see? I mean,
steps should be taken are the same as everywhere. The people should vote for somebody else than the people they're usually voting for, but they don't. Even in Eastern Germany, the CDU, Merkel's party, still gets more votes than the AfD. And after all these years of watching it, I've never come up with any explanation of why people behave the way they do. Collective insanity is the only thing that I can say. It seems that there is a kind of madness abroad in the land. The power of the propaganda, apparently it's very, I mean, you and I and Vlad, the propaganda doesn't affect us, but it seems that most people are very susceptible to it. So what the television tells them to think about all this is what they think about it. You know, they hear the TV talk about us far-right people who are racists and xenophobes and Islamophobes, and they know they're not like that, so they want to welcome the refugees. And it seems to be still effective. It seems to be effective. I remember the parents of the young woman who got raped and murdered and thrown in the river, Vlad, and that what happened to their daughter didn't stop them from being social justice warriors. They continued in the same mode.
They doubled down.
It doesn't seem like I always thought that when people really get a taste of what it's going to be like, that they'll change their minds, but they don't. You know, that I assume that eventually the women convert and put on the veil and get married off to Muslims, and the men who want to have 4 wives will also convert. You know, I can't, and then the economy is also collapsing at the same time. That has happened because the more Muslim a society gets, the less productive it is, the more its wealth deteriorates. And so as Britain or Germany or Sweden becomes more Muslim, it also becomes poorer and less productive, and the welfare state has to cut back and cut back. And all the while people converting to Islam, or, you know, at least pretending to be Islamic to keep from getting beaten up in the street. Where do we end up after that? I don't know.